They framed the COP. Only the black FBI agent knew the dark secret behind it all. There are stories so tangled and deeply rooted in betrayal that they seem like they could only exist in the darkest corners of fiction. Yet sometimes reality can be even more twisted and far more dangerous. In the heart of Chicago, a decorated police officer found himself blindsided by a sinister setup so elaborate it threatened to destroy his life and bring chaos to the city he'd sworn to protect. Gossip raged, trust eroded, and powerful figures silently pulled the strings from the shadows. Only one man, a black FBI agent with an unwavering sense of justice, suspected the truth, and the price for exposing it would be high. Officer Marcus King was no stranger to hardship. Growing up on Chicago's South Side, he had witnessed violence in many forms: drug deals on street corners, petty theft that escalated into tragedy, and the routine daily grind of families struggling to stay afloat. Even as a teenager, Marcus had dreamed of becoming a cop. He believed that if someone rose from that very community to enforce justice, maybe, just maybe, things could change. His mother always told him he had a heart of gold. She would gently press her hands against his cheeks, smiling with pride while admonishing him never to lose his kindness. No matter how bad the world became, Marcus had held on to that dream. He graduated from the police academy at the top of his class. He joined the Chicago Police Department CPD at 21 and quickly made a name for himself. He had a reputation for empathy and fairness. He wasn't just a rule follower, but someone who understood the nuances of the neighborhoods he patrolled. When Sergeant Randall Fenton, an old-school police veteran with decades on the force, first took notice of Marcus, everyone felt certain it was a career-defining moment. Fenton didn't hand out praise lightly. More often than not, he was gruff, cynical, and suspicious of rookies. But something about Marcus's tenacity and compassion caught Fenton's attention. The sergeant became a subtle mentor, dropping hints about department politics, letting Marcus ride along on tough calls, and exposing him to the gritty corners of Chicago that demanded more than just a badge and a gun. Marcus discovered early on that any system with this much power, especially in a city as large as Chicago, carried its fair share of secrets. Sometimes these secrets were benign, the quiet nepotism that allowed a favored nephew to join the force without meeting all the requirements, or the push to close certain petty cases quickly to make the numbers look good. But sometimes the secrets ran darker, hidden behind the polished public image of protect and serve. Corruption had existed in the CPD for years, with certain officers rumored to collaborate with gangs, accept bribes, and tip off criminals in exchange for hush money. Marcus never wanted to believe that good men he'd worked with might be capable of such betrayal, but he wasn't naive. Even though he sensed the shadows in the system, he remained steadfast in his mission: protect the people, no matter the cost. He had a strong track record: commendations for bravery, departmental awards for community outreach, and testimonies from those he'd helped throughout the city. Marcus was, for all intents and purposes, the poster child of what a good officer looked like. When rumors began swirling about a major racketeering sting that had gone sideways, Marcus barely paid attention. There were always hush-hush operations going on behind the scenes. The talk around the precinct's water cooler typically involved half-truths. Nobody knew the full story. But soon, a different tone emerged, one with an ominous edge: hush money, fraudulent reports, and unsettling connections to a few local politicians. If you listened carefully, it seemed the department was on the verge of a scandal with enough weight to topple more than just police brass. Then, out of nowhere, Sergeant Fenton started acting different. He became cautious and distant around Marcus. At first, it seemed like normal stress. But gradually it felt as if he were pushing Marcus away, making cryptic remarks, warning him to mind his own business, and telling him that not every suspect needed to be treated with kid gloves. Marcus found himself bewildered, even hurt, by his mentor's transformation. Something big was brewing, but no one would admit to what it was. And soon, Fenton wasn't the only one behaving strangely. Colleagues who had been friendly with Marcus suddenly turned stony, offering curt greetings before rushing out of sight, as if afraid to be seen conversing with him. One evening, Marcus left the station and spotted a black SUV with tinted windows parked across the street. It seemed unremarkable at first. Chicago was full of tinted window vehicles, but after he walked 4 blocks in the drizzle, he noticed the SUV creeping up behind him again. When he finally confronted it, the driver sped off, disappearing into the stream of traffic under the flickering streetlights. Marcus's instincts flared with warning, but he pushed his suspicions aside. He told himself it was just some random motorist. Besides, criminals occasionally tried to intimidate him. It wasn't unusual for gang members to scope out an officer's route home, but something about this was different. It felt systematic, like a predator waiting to pounce at the right moment. Unbeknownst to him, the trap was already being set, and soon every aspect of his life would be under siege. Amid the swirling tensions, a single incident ignited the firestorm, a high-stakes drug bust gone awry at an abandoned warehouse near the Chicago River. It was meant to be a routine raid. CPD had received a tip about a large shipment coming in late at night. Marcus was among the responding officers. Everyone expected a straightforward operation: break down the door, secure the contraband, arrest the suspects. Instead, chaos erupted the moment they entered. Gunfire lit up the gloom, bullets ricocheting off old machinery. In the confusion, 2 officers got hit, both severely wounded. When the gunfire ceased, the perpetrators had slipped away, leaving a small stash of narcotics behind, as if taunting the CPD. The officers scrambled to call in ambulances and secure the crime scene. As paramedics arrived, whisking the wounded men away to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Marcus helped comb the premises for evidence, yet something felt off. The entire situation was too clean, only a fraction of the drugs they expected to find, and no suspects in sight. Another officer remarked that it seemed like the dealers had known the raid was coming. Back at the station, accusations began flying. Someone had leaked the intel. Betrayal from within wasn't unheard of, but the stakes had never felt so high. Then, in a stunning turn of events, a few officers started pointing fingers directly at Marcus. The claim was ludicrous to anyone who knew him. This was the same Marcus King who risked his life in shootouts to protect bystanders, who'd once dived into the Chicago River to save a child, but rumors traveled fast. He was summoned to the captain's office the following morning. Captain Irene Caldwell sat behind her heavy mahogany desk, a stern expression on her face. She cut straight to the chase. "Officer King," she said in a low, steady voice, "serious allegations have been made against you concerning last night's raid. Certain confidential documents indicate that you had knowledge of the bust before it was relayed to the rest of the team." Marcus's head spun. "MAAM, that's impossible," he said, standing rigid. "I received the same notice as everyone else. I can't imagine who would say otherwise." Captain Caldwell slid a manila folder across the desk. Inside, Marcus saw copies of emails, phone logs, and scribbled notes that appeared to link him to suspicious communications. He felt his stomach clench when he read references to a burner phone tied to his name. The pinned narrative was damning. It suggested that Marcus had alerted a known criminal enterprise about the sting operation. There were even details about money exchanged, though the log was vague on where or how the handoff occurred. "You must know this is all fabricated," Marcus said, his voice trembling as he tried to keep his composure. "Someone is setting me up. I have no idea how these logs and emails came to be. Caldwell's stoic visage didn't budge. We're placing you under immediate suspension, pending a full internal affairs investigation. Hand over your badge and weapon. Marcus felt the bottom drop out of his world as he removed the items that had defined his sense of purpose for so long. The weight of the departmental distrust crushed him. He looked at Captain Caldwell's eyes, searching for a hint of doubt, some sign she recognized. He was innocent. If she did, she kept it locked away behind an impenetrable gaze. Word spread like wildfire. Within hours, the media had gotten wind of the scandal. CPD officer accused of criminal collusion. A local news station broadcast a photo of Marcus in uniform, describing him as a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. Marcus felt the blow keenly. His mother called him, voice quavering, frightened by the headlines. His friends from the neighborhood were confused and hurt. Online comment sections turned rabid, with strangers condemning him as just another corrupt cop. Amid this storm, Marcus's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Hesitating, he picked up. The voice was calm, steady, and carried an unyielding determination. "Officer King, my name is James Warren. I'm with the FBI. We need to talk." Marcus froze. James Warren. He'd never heard the name, but now the situation felt even more serious. Why would the FBI involve themselves in a CPD matter? Warren set a meeting at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of Hyde Park. When Marcus arrived, he spotted a tall, lean black man dressed casually in a plain sports jacket, a look that immediately screamed federal agent trying to blend in. Warren greeted Marcus with a polite smile. "Thanks for coming," the agent said, gesturing to a seat. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." Marcus's distrust was evident. He sat stiffly. "So the FBI's investigating me too?" he asked, exhaustion lacing his voice. Warren paused, folding his hands. "No, not exactly. I've been investigating something else. Some bigger threads that might tie in with your case. Let me be blunt. I don't think you're guilty. I've read the preliminary reports, and the evidence against you doesn't add up. It's too convenient. And some of the sources providing these details are questionable at best." Relief washed over Marcus, but it was tinged with apprehension. "Then why contact me?" he demanded. "Because I believe someone's orchestrating all of this," Warren replied. "And it's not just about tarnishing your name. They want you out of the way. I think you stumbled onto something, even if you don't realize it, and they decided you were too much of a threat." Marcus stared at the man across the table, searching for any signs of deceit. He found none. But who and why? Warren looked around the cafe to ensure no one was eavesdropping. "That's what we need to figure out. This might reach higher than you suspect. Police brass, local politicians, maybe even city officials. They have resources. They can fabricate evidence, bribe witnesses, and make it look like you're the dirty cop, when in fact, they're just using you as a scapegoat. I'm working off the record here with only a handful of trusted associates. We can't risk tipping our hand too soon." Marcus's heart pounded. A part of him had guessed something bigger was at play, but hearing it spelled out by an FBI agent was jarring. "So what do we do?" he asked quietly. Warren leaned forward, his voice steady with conviction. "We fight back covertly. Trust me, you're not alone in this. We'll prove your innocence and uncover the people behind this conspiracy." With that promise lingering, the two men began a clandestine partnership. Yet neither could have foreseen the true depth of the darkness awaiting them or the sacrifices they would have to make to bring the truth to light. For the next few days, Marcus lay low, hiding in the humble apartment he'd rented since joining the force. Every knock at the door jolted him. The media frenzy continued unabated, with speculation swirling on cable news channels and tabloids alike. Old acquaintances suddenly found a reason not to return his calls. Meanwhile, James Warren performed his own brand of quiet infiltration, combing through departmental logs and scouring leads that hinted at high-level corruption. Warren had one key ally he trusted within CPD, a young detective named Alyssa Park. Park was known for her unimpeachable morals and methodical approach. She'd once worked briefly with Warren on a joint case involving interstate trafficking, and while they weren't close friends, they respected each other's integrity. It was late evening when Warren reached out to Park from a burner phone, using coded language to arrange a face-to-face meeting behind an old industrial park. When Park arrived, tension was etched into her features. She had a slender build, short black hair, and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Agent Warren, you're not doing me any favors by summoning me like this," Park said, scanning the perimeter to ensure they were alone. "I'm putting my job on the line just by talking to you." Warren nodded. "I know. I appreciate it more than I can say. But right now, we have a chance to expose something huge and help an innocent man in the process." Park folded her arms, glancing at the pile of folders Warren handed over. As she skimmed through the documents, her expression morphed from skepticism to alarm. "These files. They suggest that certain upper-tier individuals in CPD might be funneling narcotics money into local political campaigns." "Are you serious?" she asked, voice hushed and urgent. "It looks that way," Warren replied. "And the best scapegoat is a high-profile cop with a pristine record, someone who's liked by the community, but maybe not as well connected within the department's inner circles. They pin this fiasco on Officer King, remove him from the equation, and no one questions that bigger racket." Park exhaled slowly, her breath visible in the chilly night air. If this is true, it could blow the department wide open. But do you realize the consequences? We're talking about going after big names, possibly someone who's wearing a commander's badge right now. Warren's tone was firm. "We can't let that deter us. This is exactly what we swore to fight: corruption that undermines the justice we're supposed to uphold." Park's lips pressed into a thin line. "All right," she finally said. "I'll do what I can, but I have to be careful. If they catch even a whiff that I'm working with the FBI, my career and possibly my life will be in danger." They parted ways, each weighed down by a sense of impending confrontation. While Park quietly launched her internal probe, Warren arranged a secret meeting with Marcus in a dilapidated old building near the Chicago waterfront. The windows were boarded up, the graffiti on the walls half faded, but it offered privacy. Marcus arrived with a hood pulled over his head. "Any new leads?" Marcus asked, eyes scanning the shadows anxiously. Warren handed him the initial threads from Park's covert research. "We suspect that the corruption runs through the department's upper echelons. Some of those files reference an unnamed politician with strong ties to the CPD's top brass. Money's changed hands, allegedly disguised as campaign contributions. We have to be systematic. One misstep, and they'll clamp down on us. Or worse." Marcus read the documents in stunned silence. Then he looked up at Warren, the gravity of the situation carving worry lines into his forehead. "How do I fit into this? I'm not a threat to any politician. I don't even know these people personally." Warren took a breath. "I think you came too close to exposing their operation somehow. Or maybe your clean record threatened to shine a spotlight on their misdeeds if you ever got promoted or found yourself in the right place at the wrong time. You're a good cop, Marcus, someone who's proven they won't compromise. To men like them, that makes you dangerous." Marcus's eyes burned with anger. "We can't let them get away with this." If these people are leveraging their power and framing innocent officers, the city is in more danger than we realize. Warren nodded. I agree. We'll need proof, irrefutable, concrete evidence that ties them directly to these crimes. Documents, bank records, witness testimonies, and we have to move carefully. Days bled into nights as the quiet investigation progressed. While the city buzzed with headlines about Marcus's alleged betrayal, he and Warren gathered intelligence under the radar. Park fed them tidbits of insider info whenever she could, referencing suspicious financial transactions and cryptic emails. They discovered that Sergeant Randall Fenton, the same man who had mentored Marcus, appeared multiple times in connection with large, unexplained deposits. Each deposit lined up suspiciously with major busts that went catastrophically wrong, just like the one that had damned Marcus. Marcus wrestled with disbelief. Had his own mentor been involved in the conspiracy? It explained Fenton's abrupt shift in attitude, the evasiveness in his eyes. But it still hurt, as if a father figure had plunged a knife into his back. As the puzzle pieces began to fit, Marcus grew restless. Every day he remained in hiding. His name was dragged further through the mud. He wanted to confront Fenton directly, to demand answers. But Warren and Park cautioned restraint. The conspiracy clearly extended beyond a single man. They needed more time to gather bulletproof evidence. Meanwhile, a subpoena arrived at Marcus's door, summoning him to an internal affairs hearing. The departmental machine moved swiftly when it wanted to. The hearing date was set a week away. If Marcus failed to show, or if he couldn't present a credible defense, the department would file criminal charges. He'd lose his freedom, his career, everything. The stakes had never been higher, and time was running short. Little did Marcus realize the next steps in this web of deceit, it would threaten not just his future, but the lives of anyone who dared stand with him. On a rainy Saturday afternoon, James Warren finally caught a lucky break. Through a confidential source at City Hall, he obtained the name of the politician rumored to be deeply intertwined with certain corrupt elements of the CPD, Councilman Raymond Beckett. Beckett was a rising star in Chicago's local government, known for championing funding for law enforcement initiatives. He was admired by many for his tough-on-crime stance, but beneath the surface, there were whispers that he was less interested in real justice and more focused on personal profit. Warren immediately suspected that Beckett had orchestrated the scheme to frame Marcus, or at least sanctioned it. But suspicion alone wasn't enough. They needed unimpeachable proof. That proof arrived in the form of an encrypted flash drive that Warren's source managed to smuggle out of a city office. The data included financial spreadsheets showing suspicious consulting fees paid to Beckett's campaign by shell companies. Astonishingly, one of the shell companies was associated with a man known only as RF, initials that pointed directly to Randall Fenton. Warren's pulse quickened. He couldn't do this alone. He arranged for a nighttime meeting with Alyssa Park in the dimly lit basement of an abandoned grocery store. The place reeked of mildew, and the overhead light flickered ominously as they sifted through the data. I can't believe Beckett's name is in these files, Park whispered, hunched over the rickety table. He's been a political darling in Chicago for the last few years. Warren's gaze darkened. Power corrupts. If Fenton's working directly with Beckett, they could be siphoning money from drug trafficking and contraband raids, all while using the CPD's resources to eliminate competition or silence troublemakers. He glanced at Park. That includes scapegoating good officers like Marcus. Park swallowed. If we present this to my superiors in the department, half of them might be complicit. We need to go higher. But who do we trust? We may have to go public, Warren replied, but not yet. We still don't have the smoking gun that ties Fenton, Beckett, and the fabricated evidence against Marcus all together in one neat package. We need something that definitively proves the frame-up. Park hesitated. I might have an idea. Fenton has a private locker at the station that he thinks no one knows about. He uses it to store personal items, or at least that's what the official record says. But I heard from a colleague he sometimes stashes sensitive documents there. If we can get inside, that could be the missing piece. Warren cut in, excitement stirring in his eyes. Let's do it. The plan was risky. Park would have to break departmental protocol, risking her job and her life. But the next evening, under the guise of working overtime, she slipped into the station's lower-level storage area. Using a set of skeleton keys acquired through less than official channels, she opened Fenton's private locker. Her heart pounded. The musty smell of dust and disuse filled her nostrils as she rummaged through files, envelopes, and a few old trophies. Then, tucked at the bottom of a hidden compartment, she found a slim folder marked with a single word, Redline. Park's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were copies of falsified police reports, each linking Marcus King to criminal dealings. She also found a roster of names officers who had been paid off or pressured into providing false testimonies. And on the final page, a direct link to Councilman Beckett's office. Instructions on how to channel certain discretionary funds to keep those officers cooperative. It was the physical evidence they'd been waiting for. Park immediately contacted Warren and Marcus to share what she had. The three arranged a meeting at an old diner near the outskirts of the city, long after its usual closing time. The owner, an acquaintance of Warren's from a previous case, agreed to let them use the back booth in total secrecy. When Park spread out the contents of the Redline folder, Marcus felt a mix of rage and profound sadness. He recognized the names of colleagues he had once trusted, people who had even shared a beer with him after long shifts. Each had apparently taken hush money to condemn him. "It's worse than I thought," Marcus said, voice trembling. "All these people, they just threw me under the bus?" Park's expression was grim. They either took payoffs or were intimidated into silence. "I suspect some of them were threatened with blackmail. Fenton targeted folks who had skeletons in their closets, gambling debts, extramarital affairs. You name it." Warren tapped a page listing deposit amounts and coded references. "We have to tie this back to Councilman Beckett directly. The instructions on these pages are good evidence, but they're still not quite definitive. We need something that proves Beckett and Fenton actively conspired to frame Marcus." Park flipped to the next set of documents. "I think it's here," she said, pointing to a paragraph describing a meeting agenda. The location was a small hotel near the Magnificent Mile, right in downtown Chicago. The meeting date was only 2 days away. "If Beckett and Fenton are meeting there," said Warren, "this might be our chance. If we can record them discussing the frame-up, that's undeniable evidence." A daring plan took shape. They would covertly bug the meeting room, capturing audio of Beckett and Fenton's conversation. But the scheme required precision, and the risks were sky-high. If caught, they'd face serious legal repercussions. Even an FBI agent couldn't just bug a private meeting without ironclad justification. But they were out of time. Marcus's internal affairs hearing was looming, and they needed a bombshell to exonerate him. The next 2 days were a blur. Warren pulled every string he could to secure covert surveillance gear without officially involving the Bureau. Park used her CPD access to borrow a departmental listening device under a benign pretext. Marcus strategized how to slip into the hotel unnoticed, determined to be there in person if anything went wrong. Finally, the night of the meeting arrived. Rain battered the city, neon lights glistening on wet pavement as the trio converged on the hotel. Park was stationed in a rented SUV across the street, monitoring the audio feed. Warren positioned himself in the lobby, disguised in a maintenance uniform. Marcus, wearing a baseball cap pulled low, kept lookout near the rear entrance. At 8 p.m., a sleek town car pulled up. Councilman Beckett emerged, flanked by 2 hefty bodyguards. Minutes later, Sergeant Fenton arrived in a plain black sedan, alone. The men went straight to room 615, according to the front desk register Park had obtained. Warren waited until they were safely inside before he crept into the hallway. With steady, practiced hands, he attached a small bug to the doorframe, a device that could pick up conversations from within. Then he slipped away, heart pounding. Park's voice crackled over Warren's earpiece. "We're getting audio. Stand by." For the next 30 minutes, they listened, tension gripping them like a vise. At first, the conversation was innocuous. Beckett complained about the traffic and the city's incompetent bureaucracy, but soon the talk turned more sinister. "The King situation," Beckett said, his voice muffled. "It needs to be wrapped up neatly. We can't have that fiasco dragging on, or the press might start sniffing in the wrong corners." Fenton's response was clearer. "Don't worry, Councilman. The IA hearing will finish him off. We've got enough officers to testify, thanks to those incentives you provided. He'll be convicted in no time. And you're sure none of this can be traced back to me?" Beckett asked. Fenton let out a humorless chuckle. "The evidence ties King to the drug rings, and I made sure to distance your name from the paper trail. Even if anyone suspects, they won't have proof. But if that FBI agent starts poking around what's his name, Warren, we might have to deal with him too." Beckett sighed. "We already took steps to smear King. If Warren becomes a problem, you have the same options." A pause. Then Beckett lowered his voice. "If you need to eliminate them both, do it." Park's voice reverberated in Warren's ear. "We got it. That's more than enough to blow this wide open." Warren exhaled sharply, adrenaline coursing through him. "Great work. Let's pack up." And suddenly, a commotion sounded inside the room. There was a beep from the bug, followed by heavy footsteps. The line went dead. Warren's blood ran cold. "They found the bug," he said in a hoarse whisper. Panic flared. In the lobby, Warren made a beeline for the exit, calmly as possible. Park started the SUV, ready to peel away at the first sign of trouble. But as Warren stepped onto the sidewalk, a black SUV screeched around the corner, nearly clipping him. 2 men jumped out, guns drawn. Marcus, watching from his vantage point, sprang into action. He snuck up behind the men, grabbing the first one's wrist and forcing the gun to the ground. A scuffle ensued, fists flying. Marcus delivered a swift punch to the second attacker's jaw. Warren scrambled out of the way, adrenaline spiking. Another black sedan roared up, reinforcements no doubt. This was going south fast. Park slammed the accelerator. The SUV careened across the street, blocking the path of the sedan. She honked furiously, simultaneously radioing for backup. The men who had attacked Warren scattered, regrouping to jump back into their vehicle. Shots rang out, shattering the SUV's back window. Marcus ducked behind a parked car, returning fire with a sidearm that Warren tossed him. Chaos erupted. Bystanders screamed, diving for cover. In the confusion, Beckett and Fenton likely escaped through a side exit. Within minutes, CPD sirens blared, flooding the street with flashing lights. The men in black vehicles tore away, vanishing into the night. Panting, heart hammering, Marcus sprinted to the SUV. Park's hands were shaking on the wheel. Warren slid in next to her, teeth clenched with anger. "They know we have them on tape," he said, pressing a small device to his chest. "Good thing we backed up the feed externally. Let's go before CPD tries to pin this shootout on us, too." They fled into the darkness, battered but clutching a golden key, an irrefutable audio recording linking Beckett and Fenton to the conspiracy. The next morning, Marcus woke in a nondescript motel on the edge of town. His body ached from the fight, and his mind reeled with everything that had happened. Yet a flicker of hope glimmered. He finally had tangible proof of his innocence. It was time to reveal the truth. They coordinated a plan swiftly. Warren reached out to a contact in the press, a seasoned investigative journalist at the Chicago Tribune named Carla Vance. She was known for exposing corruption, no matter how high it went. After a quick briefing, Carla agreed to a clandestine meeting at a secure location. She promised that if the evidence was solid, she would run the story immediately. With careful precision, they transported the audio recordings, the red line folder, and their own testimonies to a small office rented under Carla's name. She listened to the tape, eyes widening with each damning sentence. Then she flipped through the documents, shaking her head in disbelief. "This is explosive," she whispered. Councilman Beckett, a respected figure, orchestrating a massive frame up with the help of a high-ranking CPD sergeant. If this is legit, Chicago is in for a political earthquake. "It's legit," Marcus said, fists clenched. "This is my life they tried to destroy. I'm not going to sit back quietly anymore." Carla looked up, determination burning in her gaze. "We'll run the story. You have my word, but expect backlash. This is going to make some very powerful people angry." "Can you handle the fallout?" Warren answered for the group. "We can't afford not to. This is about more than just clearing Marcus's name. It's about exposing a network of corruption that's been poisoning the city for who knows how long." Carla nodded. "Let me get started. You need to prepare for the fallout." They left, hearts pounding. The story would break in tomorrow's early edition. But the day before the internal affairs hearing, Marcus wanted to be sure the CPD had no choice but to acknowledge the truth. Warren called a direct line to the Chicago Police Board, demanding an emergency hearing to present newly uncovered evidence. The board was reluctant, citing formal procedures, but the mention of smoking gun evidence of departmental corruption made them pause. Finally, they agreed. On the morning of the hearing, the atmosphere in the CPD's administrative building was tense and electric. Dozens of officers and media members packed the halls. Marcus, wearing a suit borrowed from Warren, entered with shoulders squared, flanked by Warren and Park. In the hearing room, a panel of solemn faces awaited him. At the center of the panel sat Captain Caldwell, stiff and stern. To her right, Sergeant Fenton, eyes narrowed, exuded a false sense of calm. A small group of presumably bribed officers waited in the wings to testify against Marcus. The air crackled with anticipation. Captain Caldwell opened the proceedings. "Officer Marcus King, you stand accused of leaking intel that led to the botched drug bust and the injury of 2 officers. How do you plead?" Marcus stood, voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "Not guilty." Fenton rose, wearing a mask of self-righteous indignation. "He's lying, MAAM. We have the logs, the records actually," Warren interjected, stepping forward. "We have new evidence that proves Officer King was framed." A murmur rippled through the room. Fenton's face twitched. Caldwell glanced at him, then at Warren. "Evidence?" she asked, brows furrowing. Park wheeled in a projector. She explained, "Over the last few days, Agent Warren and I obtained covert recordings and official documents. They reveal a conspiracy involving Sergeant Fenton and a local politician, Councilman Raymond Beckett." Fenton tried to interject, but Caldwell silenced him with a raised hand. "Continue, Detective Park." Park pressed play on the audio. The entire room fell silent as they heard Beckett and Fenton's voices discussing the frame up against Marcus. The line about "if you need to eliminate them both, do it" echoed ominously in the hushed chamber. Gasps erupted. Several officers craned forward, stunned. Fenton went pale, sweat beading on his forehead. Marcus then presented copies of the red line folder documents, showing how evidence was falsified and bribes funneled to certain officers. He ended with a statement of his own: "I only joined this force to serve and protect. Instead, I was targeted by the very people who swore to uphold the law." This conspiracy goes all the way to City Hall. Councilman Beckett and Sergeant Fenton are behind it. Captain Caldwell's face was a storm of anger and shock. She turned to Fenton. "Sergeant, do you have anything to say?" Fenton's composure cracked. He stammered, This is a ploy. They fabricated..." But it was too late. The tide had turned. Officers in the back were already stepping away from Fenton, as though his corruption might be contagious. Reporters scribbled furiously. Caldwell called for an immediate recess, sending security to detain Fenton and anyone else implicated. Marcus slumped into a chair, relief surging through him. He shared a moment of silent gratitude with Warren and Park. Justice hadn't fully prevailed yet, but the wall of lies was finally crumbling. The story broke in the Chicago Tribune the following morning, with a headline that roared across the city: "Councilman Beckett, CPD, Sergeant accused of corruption, framing officer." Public outrage reached a fever pitch. City officials scrambled to distance themselves from Beckett, who promptly vanished from the public eye. Protesters gathered outside City Hall, demanding accountability. Meanwhile, Captain Caldwell organized a sweeping internal investigation, determined to purge the department of all who had colluded with Fenton. Within days, Fenton was arrested. Former allies turned on him, eager to strike plea deals and save themselves. Their testimonies painted a damning picture of a vast corruption network funneling drug money into political campaigns. Councilman Beckett was located in a suburban hideaway and taken into federal custody. He faced charges of racketeering, conspiracy, and attempted murder based on the recorded instructions to eliminate Marcus and Warren. The city reeled from the scandal, its confidence in local government and the police force shaken to the core. As for Marcus, a formal apology and reinstatement quickly followed. The public swelled with sympathy, and community leaders championed him as a hero who'd survived a corruption ring. At a press conference, Captain Caldwell spoke to the cameras. "Officer King's name has been cleared. He remains one of our finest. We will learn from this and rebuild trust with the citizens of Chicago." A surge of relief filled Marcus's heart. As he stepped up to the podium, cameras flashed, capturing his steady gaze. "I won't pretend this hasn't scarred me," he said, voice resonating with both relief and lingering hurt. "But I believe in the ideals of justice, and I'll keep fighting for them. Not just for myself, but for every honest officer out there and every citizen who depends on us to do what's right." Cheers erupted from the crowd, and the sound was like a salve to his weary soul. Standing off to the side, Warren watched with a hint of pride. Though it hadn't been easy, they'd exposed a deep-rooted corruption. Karma had come crashing down on those who thought themselves untouchable: Fenton, Beckett, and all their enablers. Consequences cut like a blade, swift and uncompromising. In the weeks that followed, investigations rippled outward, ensnaring more corrupt players, from low-level fixers to high-ranking officials. Every new arrest felt like a step toward redemption for Marcus and the city he loved. The storms of suspicion around him had parted, making way for a glimmer of hope. Thanks to Park's fearless detective work, Warren's unwavering determination, and Marcus's raw will to stand up for the truth, justice prevailed. Marcus King would never be the same after the ordeal. He carried the weight of betrayal, but also the lessons of resilience and the power of unity. When he returned to patrol in Chicago's neighborhoods, he did so with renewed purpose to show the people that even in a flawed system, genuine justice could triumph. Alyssa Park,